My wedding day was perfect, a dream come true, until my new husband looked at me in our penthouse suite and asked to sleep on the couch. The weight of the lace and beading on my shoulders felt like the weight of a promise, a beautiful, heavy certainty that I had finally found my forever. Our wedding day was a blur of white roses, heartfelt toasts, and the constant reassuring presence of my new husband, Alex, by my side. Every time I looked at him, his blue eyes sparkling under the fairy lights of the reception hall, my heart did this ridiculous little flutter, the same one I'd felt on our first date. He was everything. The man who finished my sentences, who knew I needed coffee before conversation, who held my hand just a little tighter when we walked through a crowd. The day was perfect, utterly, cinematically perfect. Our first dance was to a song we'd heard on the radio during our first road trip, and when he spun me around, whispering, "Mrs. Collins," in my ear, I thought I might actually burst from happiness. All of our friends and family were there, their faces glowing with love and a little too much champagne, celebrating us. It was, without a single doubt, the happiest day of my life. When we finally escaped to the hotel's penthouse suite, my cheeks hurt from smiling. The room was stunning. A sprawling space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a bottle of champagne chilling in an ice bucket, and rose petals scattered across a bed that looked big enough to sleep a family of 4. I kicked off my heels with a sigh of relief and turned to Alex, my heart thrumming with anticipation. This was it. The final perfect piece of our perfect day, the start of our life. I walked towards him, ready to start fumbling with the 100 tiny buttons on the back of my dress, but he was just standing by the window, his back to me, looking out at the glittering skyline. "Alex," I said softly. He turned, but the brilliant smile he'd worn all day was gone. It was replaced by something tired, strained. "Hey," he said, his voice quiet. "Hey yourself, Mr. Collins," I giggled, trying to bring the celebratory mood back into the room. "Need some help with that bow tie?" He shook his head and ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up. "Listen, Sarah, I know this is going to sound crazy." A cold knot formed in my stomach. "What is?" He walked over and took my hands, his own feeling clammy and cool. I'm completely wrecked. The stress, the excitement, all the people. My head is spinning. I think I had a little too much champagne." He looked at me, his eyes pleading for understanding. "I know it's our wedding night, but would you be angry if I just crashed? I feel like I could sleep for a week." I stared at him, my own exhaustion completely forgotten. Disappointment, sharp and unwelcome, pricked at me. This wasn't how the story was supposed to go. But then I looked at his face, the dark circles under his eyes I hadn't noticed before, the genuine weariness in his expression. He did look exhausted, and the day had been a marathon. "Oh," was all I could manage to say at first. "Of course not. I mean, if you're tired, you're tired. It's been a crazy day." I tried to force a smile to be the cool, understanding wife. "The bed is big enough. You can take that side." He winced slightly. "Actually, I was thinking, maybe I could sleep on the couch? I'm just so wired and exhausted at the same time. I know I'll be tossing and turning. I don't want to keep you up. I want you to get a good night's sleep." The couch? He wanted to sleep on the couch on our wedding night? The cold knot in my stomach tightened into a ball of ice. This felt wrong, deeply, fundamentally wrong. "Alex, don't be silly. We can just sleep in the same bed, like we always do." "Please, Sarah," he said, his voice almost a whisper, "just for tonight. I'm overwhelmed. I want our first time as husband and wife to be perfect, not rushed and clumsy when I feel like this. We have our whole lives. Let's just start tomorrow, rested and fresh." He framed it so reasonably, so thoughtfully, that arguing felt selfish. He was thinking of us, of making it perfect. How could I fight that? So I nodded, my throat tight, and watched as he grabbed a pillow from the bed, kissed my forehead with a quick, chaste peck, and said, "I love you, Mrs. Collins. See you in the morning." And then he was gone, settled on the massive sectional in the adjoining living room area, leaving me alone in our palatial honeymoon suite. I stood there for a long time in my gorgeous, expensive dress, feeling lonelier than I ever had in my life. I eventually managed the buttons myself, hung the dress up carefully, and slid into the cold, empty expanse of the king-sized bed. Sleep wouldn't come. Every creak of the hotel, every distant siren felt amplified in the silence. I replayed his words over and over. Nerves, exhaustion, wanting it to be perfect. It made sense, but it didn't feel right. After an hour of staring at the ceiling, I finally gave up. Maybe some water would help. I slipped out of bed and padded barefoot across the plush carpet towards the living area. He'd left his suit jacket slung over the back of an armchair. It looked so careless, so unlike the meticulous man I married. I walked over to it, intending to hang it up properly in the closet. As I lifted the heavy wool, my fingers brushed against something hard and rectangular in the inside pocket. Probably his wallet, I thought. But as I pulled it out, my blood ran cold. It wasn't his wallet. It was a hotel key card, and it wasn't the key to our suite. I held the thin piece of plastic in my hand, its sterile white surface mocking the lavishness of our wedding. My mind scrambled for a logical explanation. Maybe it was for the gym. No, most hotels use the suite key for that. Maybe it belonged to his best man, Mark, and Alex was just holding on to it. But why? Mark was a grown man, perfectly capable of managing his own key. Every innocent scenario I concocted felt thin, like a see-through excuse that couldn't cover the ugly shape of what I was really thinking. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silent suite. I looked over at the couch. Alex was still, breathing deeply in what looked like a peaceful sleep. Was he faking? The thought was a venomous dart. I had to know. I couldn't spend my wedding night, the first night of my forever, with this poison of suspicion seeping into my soul. I needed to prove my own mind wrong. I needed to see that this was all a huge, silly misunderstanding so I could crawl back into bed and laugh about my newlywed paranoia in the morning. Tiptoeing to the door, I slipped out of the suite, the generic hotel key clutched in my fist. The hallway was empty, the quiet hum of the building the only sound. I felt like a spy in my own life. I took the elevator down to the lobby, my reflection in the mirrored walls showing a woman in a silk robe with wild, terrified eyes. The night auditor at the front desk looked up, startled. "Mrs. Collins? Is everything all right?" I forced a smile that felt like cracking glass. "Everything's perfect, thank you. Just a silly question. My husband was holding on to a key for one of our family members, and we can't for the life of us remember the room number. Could you possibly check which room this key belongs to?" I slid the card across the polished marble counter, holding my breath. He took it, his expression professionally blank. He scanned it on a small machine under the counter, a few clicks of his keyboard, and he looked back up at me. "That's for room 712. 712. We were in the penthouse on the 25th floor. Why would he have a key for a room 18 floors below us? "Oh, wonderful," I said, my voice an octave too high. "Thank you so much. You're a lifesaver." I practically ran back to the elevator, my mind a chaotic storm. 712, 712. The numbers echoed with every beat of my pulse. I pressed the button for the 7th floor, my hand trembling so badly I almost missed it. What was I doing? What if I was about to walk into something that would shatter everything? The perfect day, the perfect man, the perfect future I had so carefully built in my heart. Maybe I should just go back upstairs, forget I ever saw the key. Ignorance could be bliss, couldn't it? But I couldn't. The not knowing was already an agony. The elevator doors slid open onto a hallway identical to my own, just floors closer to the ground. I found the room easily. 7 to 12. The brass numbers gleamed under the soft lighting. I stood in front of the door for what felt like an eternity, my courage failing me. I listened, pressing my ear against the cool wood, but heard nothing. Silence. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, I raised the key card to the electronic lock. This was it. This was the moment I either proved my fears baseless or confirmed them. The machine beeped, and the small light above the handle flashed green. The lock clicked open. My stomach plummeted. The key worked. It was an active key. This wasn't a mistake. Slowly, I pushed the door inward. The room was dark except for the sliver of light from the hallway spilling across the floor. It was a standard king room, smaller than our suite, but still nice. The bed was unmade, the sheets rumpled on one side as if someone had been sitting there. A suitcase was open on a luggage rack near the window, and then my eyes landed on the nightstand. There, next to a half-empty glass of water, was a small silver picture frame. My breath caught in my throat. I crept closer, my bare feet sinking into the carpet, and picked it up. My blood turned to ice. It was a photo of Alex, his arms slung happily around a woman's shoulders, both of them beaming at the camera on a sunny beach. I knew her. Of course, I knew her. And as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I saw what was lying on the pillow just beyond the nightstand, its white ribbons trailing onto the duvet. It was her maid of honor bouquet, the one I'd handed to my own sister, my sister Chloe. The woman in the picture laughing into the sun with my husband was my own sister, the maid of honor who had straightened my veil, fluffed my train, and stood beside me with tears in her eyes as I said my vows. The bouquet on the pillow was the one I'd given her to hold, the one that was supposed to symbolize her place as my closest confidant. The entire scene was a surreal nightmare. The rumpled bed, the suitcase, the photo, it was a second life. A secret world, operating in parallel to my own, right under my nose, on my wedding day. The icy shock that had frozen me in place began to melt into a white-hot rage. The exhaustion, the nerves, the wanting it to be perfect, it was all a lie. A carefully constructed performance to get him out of our marital bed and down to hers. He wasn't overwhelmed, he was duplicitous. He wasn't tired. He was a coward. I placed the picture frame back on the nightstand with a hand that was surprisingly steady. My mind, which had been a chaotic storm just moments before, was now horrifyingly clear. The grief would come later. Right now, there was only a chilling, razor-sharp certainty about what I had to do. I walked back out of room 712, closing the door with a soft, final click. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I took the elevator back up to the penthouse, my movements deliberate and controlled. The woman in the mirrored walls looked different now. The fear was gone, replaced by a hardened resolve I didn't recognize. When I re-entered our suite, Alex was still asleep on the couch, the picture of innocence. I didn't wake him. Instead, I walked over to the armchair and placed the key for room 712 back into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. Then I picked up my phone. My first call was to the front desk. "Hello," I said, my voice calm and even. "This is Sarah Collins in the penthouse suite. My sister Chloe is in room 712. She just called me in a panic. She said she felt faint and thought she smelled gas in her room. Could you please send security and engineering up there immediately to check for a leak? And could you please have them evacuate her? It sounds urgent." The night auditor, alarmed, promised to send help right away. My second call was to my father. He answered on the second ring, his voice groggy. "Sarah? Honey, is everything okay?" "Dad," I said, keeping my voice low but firm, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. Don't ask any questions right now, just do this for me. I need you to call Alex's parents. Tell them there's a family emergency and they need to come to the hotel lobby right now. Then I need you and Mom to come down too. I'll explain everything when you get here." There was a confused pause, but my father, bless his heart, knew the sound of real trouble in his daughter's voice. "We're on our way," he said. Finally, I walked over to the couch. I didn't shake him. I didn't yell. I simply said his name. "Alex!" He stirred, blinking his eyes open with a convincing imitation of grogginess. "Sarah, what's wrong?" "There's an emergency downstairs," I said, my face a mask of neutrality. "It's Chloe. Get dressed. We have to go." Panic flared in his eyes. Real panic. The kind you can't fake. He scrambled into his clothes from the day before, fumbling with his shirt buttons. We rode the elevator down in silence, my stillness a stark contrast to his frantic energy. As the doors opened onto the lobby, the scene I had orchestrated was unfolding perfectly. 2 security guards were escorting a bewildered and robe-clad Chloe toward the front desk. My parents were rushing through the main doors, their faces etched with worry. And just behind them were Alex's parents, looking utterly confused. Chloe saw us first. Her face went from confused to horrified as her eyes darted from me to Alex. Alex froze, his jaw slackening as he took in the tableau. He saw his lover, his wife, and both sets of parents all in the same place at 2 a.m. The trap had sprung. I walked calmly into the center of the lobby, drawing everyone's attention. "Mom, Dad, Mr. and Mrs. Collins, thank you for coming." My voice didn't waver. "I'm sorry to have called you all here under false pretenses, but I felt this was a conversation best had in person." I turned my gaze to Alex, whose face had turned a pasty white. "My husband," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth, "was so overcome with nerves after our ceremony that he couldn't sleep in our bed. He needed to sleep on the couch." I let that hang in the air for a moment before turning to my sister, which is strange because it seems my maid of honor was having the exact same problem down in room 712. A collective gasp went through the small crowd. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Alex's father stared at him, his expression turning to stone. "I believe this belongs to you, Chloe," I said, pulling her maid of honor bouquet from behind my back, where I'd been holding it. I'd gone back to the room for it. It was the perfect prop. I tossed it onto the floor between them. "You left it in your room, along with a picture of you and my husband's suitcase." Chloe began to sob. Alex just stood there, speechless and broken. I looked from his shattered face to my sister's weeping form, and I felt nothing but a profound, cleansing emptiness. My perfect day was a lie. My perfect man was a fraud. But in that brightly lit hotel lobby, surrounded by the wreckage of 2 families, I had never felt more certain of myself. "The wedding is over," I announced to the room, my voice ringing with a finality that no one dared to question. "And so is this marriage." I turned, walked past my stunned parents, and headed out the glass doors into the cool night air, leaving the ruins of my old life behind me without a single look back.